on how many charter flights have been able to get out of the region so far with Americans on board?
I don't have an exact count for you, but I know that we're working on chartering many flights. As soon as we were doing it yesterday, we're doing it again today. And you should not expect us to detail exactly when these flights are taking off for obvious reasons. The Iranians have shown that they are not going to hesitate to target civilians in the region, which is completely intolerable. But for safety and security reasons, we're not going to be broadcasting when flights full of Americans are going to be taking off, obviously. Danny.
At the top there, you said that the Iranian regime is being absolutely crushed. Can you explicitly say then whether or not regime change is a goal of President Trump's operation?
The goals of this operation have been made very clear, Danny, and the president has said them in his speech when he launched this operation and released that video in the middle of the night to all of you and to the world. The stated military objectives of Operation Epic Fury are as follows: eliminate Iran's ballistic missile threat, destroy their naval capability, disrupt missile and drone production infrastructure, sever their pathway and end their pathway to nuclear weapons. And I can report, as you all saw from the Pentagon today, that thus far this operation has been remarkably successful. Again, we're moving towards complete and total control of Iranian airspace. We have continuous 24/7 strike operations ongoing. We've had more than 2,000 targets that have been struck. Nearly 2,000 munitions have been employed. The first 24 hours of this campaign were described nearly as twice the scale of the 2003 shock and awe campaign. And we've seen that the enemy, the Iranian rogue regime, their retaliatory strikes against the United States and the threat reduction has reduced significantly. If you look at the Iranian ballistic missile launches, they're down 86% from day one levels. So while the United States military continues to increase its complete dominance over this rogue regime, they are weakening day by day.
Regime change is not a phrase that you would want to use.
Again, Operation Epic Fury, I just detailed the goals and objectives of this very quickly. But obviously, as the president has said numerous times, do we want to see Iran being led by a rogue terrorist regime? No, of course not. So any day the United States of America is taking out a terrorist is a good day for our country and a good day for our people.
Given that point that you just make about the United States wouldn't mind seeing the government overthrown, certainly President Trump has talked about wanting to see Iranians overthrow the government. Has the president considered at all kind of how he views a U.S. role, if any, in Iran post-conflict?
I think it's something the president is actively considering and discussing with his advisors and his national security team. But again, right now, the focus, minute by minute, hour by hour, day by day, is on ensuring the quick and effective success of Operation Epic Fury. Sure. Go ahead.
I want to ask you about the U.S. munitions stockpile.
I don't even know who's speaking because I wasn't looking at you. You can ask a question and then I'll go to you.
Caroline, I want to ask you about the U.S. munitions stockpile. President Trump posted on Truth Social on Monday that the U.S. still has a good supply of weapons, but that we're not where we need to be. What does he mean by that? And does President Trump then want to ask on Congress to pass a supplemental to increase funding for missile interceptor systems like the ones being used to defend U.S. bases in the Middle East from Iranian missiles?
I don't have any updates for you on congressional asks from the president. As you know, under this president, we have significantly increased our defense budget, which is a good thing for the United States, for our national security, and for protecting our homeland. With respect to munitions, ammunition, weapon stockpiles, the United States of America has more than enough capability to not only successfully execute Operation Epic Fury, but to go much further. And we have weapon stockpiles in places that many people in this world don't even know about. However, the president in that post was pointing out that, unfortunately, we had a very stupid and incompetent leader in this White House for 4 years who gave away many of our best weapons for nothing, for free, to another country very far away by the name of Ukraine. So the president was pointing out how that was an unwise decision, but nevertheless, don't doubt the strength and the might of the American military. And I will also add, President Trump has rightfully been calling on defense contractors in this country to rapidly and aggressively produce American-made weapons because they are the best in the world, and the president always likes to get things done as quickly as possible, and so he's been quite vocal in his efforts to try to speed up our defense industry to protect our homeland.
Caroline, can you use some?
Go ahead.
Caroline, could you tell us about the president's current thinking about ground troops and whether they could be used, if they were to be sent into Iran, what would they be used for? What's the situation of that?
Well, they're not part of the plan for this operation at this time, but I certainly will never take away military options on behalf of the President of the United States or the Commander-in-Chief, and he wisely does not do the same for himself. I know there's many leaders in the past who like to take options off of the table without having a full understanding of how things could develop. So again, it's not part of the current plan, but I'm not going to remove an option for the President that is on the table. Sean.
Did the United States airstrike a girls' elementary school and kill 175 people?
Not that we know of, Sean, and the Department of War is investigating this matter, and I would just tell you very strongly, the United States of America does not target civilians, unlike the rogue Iranian regime that targets civilians, that kills children, that has killed thousands of their own people in the past several weeks, and uses propaganda quite effectively, and unfortunately many people in this room have fallen for that propaganda. So I would caution you from pointing the finger at the United States of America when it comes to targeting civilians, because that's not something that these armed forces do. Reagan.
Thanks, Caroline. Prior to the Iran conflict, the SAVE Act was really the focus of the news cycle. Is the SAVE Act still a priority for the administration?
Absolutely.
Can you just provide an update on the administration's talks with Congress to get the SAVE Act through?
SAVE Act is absolutely still a priority for this president and the administration. The focus, of course, of much of the president's time right now is on ensuring the success of Operation Epic Fury, but the president can walk and chew gum at the same time, and he's very much continuing to focus on the issues that matter here at home for the American people, including the passage of the SAVE Act, including on bringing down the cost of living, which is why you'll see the president in about an hour and a half at the Ratepayer Protection Pledge Roundtable, where he will be sitting with big tech companies, with AI companies who are building in communities across the country and have pledged to pick up the cost of the electricity tab in these small towns and communities across the country, which is a great thing for American consumers. So you'll be hearing from the president directly on this very important domestic agenda item later this afternoon, and it's something that he mentioned in his State of the Union address. So check it off the list as another promise made and kept by this president. Sure, go ahead.
Thanks, Caroline. I just wanted to get back to Danny's question. So those 4 objectives that you read out do not explicitly include regime change. If those objectives were achieved and the Islamic Republic still existed, would that be an acceptable outcome?
That's a hypothetical question that I'm not going to engage in. Again, right now the president and the commander-in-chief are focused on executing the success of Operation Epic Fury, which we are already doing so in a very tremendous and impressionable way. Stephen.
Thank you, Caroline. 2 questions. The Trump administration reportedly is considering arming Kurdish forces in the hopes of inspiring a popular uprising in Iran. Could you comment on that report?
I can comment on the fact that the president has held many calls with partners, allies, and leaders in the region, in the Middle East. He did speak to Kurdish leaders with respect to our base that we have in northern Iraq. But as for any report suggesting that the president has agreed to any such plan is completely false and should not be written.
President Trump was saying yesterday that he is okay with someone from within taking over in Iran. He spoke about how Venezuela he saw as a successful model where Delcy Rodriguez took over and had a better relationship. Iran's President Pezeshkian, he took office in 2024 as a relative reformer. He's part of a 3-man council now replacing the supreme leader. Does President Trump see him as a potential successor who is more pliable?
Again, that's another hypothetical, and I haven't spoken to the president about this specific individual, so I don't want to get ahead of him on any assessments that should be made.
Thank you. Yesterday, the president acknowledged that oil prices will be a bit high. As for gas prices here in the U.S., what is the admin doing right now to counter that? I mean, should they skyrocket? Is there a plan to help, Americans right now with those higher gas prices? And then a second question. On the rash that was on the president's neck, the White House physician said it was a preventative skin cream that he was using, but why is the president using this cream? What are they trying to prevent with this cream?
To your second question, I don't have anything additional to add to the physician statement that we provided to all of you on those questions, but I know the statement said that the redness on the neck will dissipate within the next couple of weeks. To your first question about oil prices, thank God we have a president who has exuded American energy dominance over the past year, an administration that is wholeheartedly focused on keeping prices stable as best as we can. Of course, this operation is temporary to protect the homeland, but crude oil prices did fall yesterday. They remain stable today after the president announced steps to ensure the stability in global energy markets. Again, those include the DEC offering reasonably priced political risk insurance and the potential for the U.S. Navy to provide protection for the flow of energy through the Strait of Hormuz. It is the president's belief and his economic team's belief that the economy continues to be very strong, it's robust, and will be able to weather any of the temporary impacts of Operation Epic Fury. John.
Thanks a lot, Caroline. Just to follow up to that, the timeline for making the Strait of Hormuz safe for oil tankers to transport their oil through the strait, what is that timeline, and what can the president do to speed up that timeline?
I don't want to commit to a timeline, but certainly it's something that is being calculated actively by both the Department of War and the Department of Energy. They're working very closely. Both secretaries are in all of the briefings on this subject with the president, and this is, again, something they're monitoring, and if and when necessary, the United States Navy will provide assistance to escort oil tankers through the strait. Sure, in the blue.
Thank you, Caroline.
You're not in blue, Andrew. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, I guess you are, sort of. I'll go to you after.
You had mentioned about the commercial aircraft being used for the evacuations. What about the use of military aircraft? Would that happen in conjunction with that or subsequent to?
That is something that is definitely underway, and of course we're going to use that in conjunction. We want as many planes, whether they're chartered, commercial, or military, taking Americans out of the Middle East and returning them safely home. So yes. Andrew, go ahead. You're welcome.
At the top of the briefing, you listed a long list of grievances against the Iranian government, going back to the takeover of the embassy in '79, barracks bombing in the 80s, etc. But no one from the administration has laid out the imminent threat that was supposed to be taken care of by this. And the rationales offered by, say, Secretary Rubio, the President's National Security Advisor, said that the threat was retaliation against American interests from Iran after Israeli strikes. The President says it was his own feeling that Iran was going to attack. Why is it that across the administration you can't say what the imminent threat against the United States was that required us to launch this? And also, Prime Minister Starmer told Parliament today that his reason that he didn't allow the use of British bases was that he was not satisfied that there was a lawful basis and a viable, thought-through plan. Was there an attempt to provide the UK government with a legal basis for these strikes and a viable, thought-through plan?
To the first question, I completely reject the premise of your question. You have had the President of the United States, the Secretary of War, the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs, the Vice President of the United States, the Secretary of State, and now I am out here today to explain to you exactly what led the President to make the decision to launch Operation Epic Fury. And President Trump does not make these decisions in a vacuum. This decision to launch this operation was based on a cumulative effect of various direct threats that Iran posed to the United States of America, and the President's feeling based on fact that Iran does pose an imminent and direct threat to the United States of America, based on the fact that they are the world's leading state sponsor of terrorism, based on the fact that they were rapidly and aggressively building up their ballistic missile program to give themselves immunity within their country alongside their navy, so that inside their country they could continue to create nuclear weapons and nuclear bombs, which would of course course, pose a risk to Americans in the region and even Americans one day here at home. And then another point on this is the president found that through these extensive, exhaustive, failed negotiations with Iran, that they were hell-bent on death and destruction. So again, the president was not going to be just another president on a very long list who sat back and stood by and passed the buck of this direct threat to the next administration. The president had a feeling, again, based on fact, that Iran was going to strike the United States, was going to strike our assets in the region, and he made a determination to launch Operation Epic Fury based on all of those reasons. And I would like the media to actually report on all of them, rather than just picking sound bites from one person in this administration and saying, oh, they're contradicting the other person. No, again, these decisions are not made in a vacuum. They are made by the president's feeling that Iran was going to strike the United States and our assets in the region, and he was not going to sit back and watch that happen. The determination was made that the president was going to strike first alongside Israel, and that has obviously been proven to be the right decision and an effective one at that. Libby, go ahead.
Thank you, Caroline. A two-part question for you here. First, has the president spoken with the family members of those U.S. service members that were killed? Second, given what you've outlined throughout this entire briefing, I mean, the United States has sunk a bunch of Navy ships. We've hit all of these targets. What can Americans expect the goal to be moving forward now that the U.S. has accomplished all of this? What is victory, given we've even taken out Iran's supreme leader? That was an explicit goal.
Again, victory will be determined by the commander-in-chief once the goals and the objectives that we have repeatedly laid out are fully realized. Again, we just, in the next few hours, will be achieving that dominance over the skies, which means the United States military will be raining missiles and weapons down on Iran to hit these specific targets that have been identified as crucial to take out by the Department of War.
Caroline.
Sure. John?
Thank you so much, Caroline. Has the U.S. posture changed in regard to a nuclear North Korea, given the latest strikes on Iran and the fact that the stated goal is to make sure that Iran is not a nuclear country?
I don't have any change in position with respect to North Korea today.
Thank you. A quick follow-up. There's been reports that Ali Khamenei's son has been elected as the next supreme leader. Does the administration think that he is a part of the same regime as his father? Would they like people in the country to rise up and get him out of power?
There's reports he's been elected or that he's assuming to be elected. One of the likely options.
Pardon me, what was that?
That he's one of the likely options or that he has been elected. Okay, so we'll wait to confirm until someone actually is elected. Caitlin.
You just mentioned that the president is going to attend the dignified transfer for these families. Given what Secretary Hegseth said this morning, is it the position of this administration that the press should not prominently cover the deaths of U.S. service members?
No, it's the position of this administration that the press in this room and the press across the country should accurately report on the success of Operation Epic Fury and the damage it is doing to the rogue Iranian regime that has threatened the lives of every single American in this room. If the Iranian regime had their choice, they would kill every single person in this room. And so we can all be very grateful that we have an administration and that we have men and women in our armed forces who are willing to sacrifice their own lives for the rest of us in this room and for every American across the country and for every troop that is based in the Middle East. That's what these...
Secretary Hegseth was complaining that it was front page news about these 6 service members who were killed.
That's not what the Secretary said, Caitlin, and that's not what the Secretary meant, and you know it. You know you are being disingenuous. There is not... We've never had a Secretary of Defense who cares more.
Drones get through or tragic things happen. It's front page news. I get it. The press only wants to make the president look bad.
Yeah,
as you know, we cover the deaths of U.S. service members under every president.
The press does only want to make the president look bad. That's a fact. Especially you. No, listen to me. Especially you and especially CNN. And the Secretary of Defense cares deeply about our war fighters and our men and women in uniform. He travels all across this country to meet with them, to connect with them, and your network has hardly ever probably reported on that. You also had the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, Chairman Kane, who's a brave patriot, standing alongside the Secretary at the Pentagon this morning, again expressing his condolences to these families. And I just told you that the President of the United States will be attending their dignified transfer. So please,
that's not making the president look bad. That's showcasing that.
We expect you to cover that as you should. We expect you to cover that as you should, Caitlin. But you and your network know that you take every single thing this administration says and tries to use it to make the president look bad. That is an objectable fact.
I don't think covering troop deaths is trying to make
If
the
you're
president
trying
look
to
bad.
if you're trying to argue right now that CNN's overwhelming coverage is not negative of President Donald Trump, I think the American people would tend to agree, and your ratings would tend to disagree with that as well. Go ahead.
Thank you so much. On the school
Sure.
strike, back to that for a minute. I understand that the U.S. does not target civilian infrastructure. That's what you said. Can you say that there's any evidence right now that it was not a U.S. strike? And then also, you didn't mention Israel in that. Is there any assessment about Israel's potential likely role in that, if at all?
Again, the Department of War is currently investigating this matter, but again, I will reaffirm that the Department of War and the United States Armed Forces do not target civilians, as does the Iranian regime, who kill and execute their own people. Christian.
On two separate issues, Caroline. First, what can you tell us about the military operation in Ecuador? And then secondly, is the president considering invoking the Defense Production Act to boost munition stockpiles while we are in this conflict?
It's not something I've heard the president consider, but as you know, the president has been in pretty direct correspondence and public correspondence with defense contractors, asking them to aggressively speed up their manufacturing of American-made weapons, which again are the best in the world. With respect to Ecuador, I would point you back to the statement released by the U.S. Southern Command. On March 3rd, Ecuadorian and U.S. military forces launched operations against designated terrorist organizations. These operations are a powerful example of the commitment of partners in Latin America and the Caribbean to combat the scourge of narco-terrorism. And together, we are taking decisive action to confront narco-terrorists who have long inflicted terror, violence, and corruption on citizens throughout the hemisphere. And with on that, I would also add that this weekend, I'm pleased to announce, the president will welcome the heads of state from 12 nations across our Western Hemisphere in Miami, Florida on Saturday. The point of this newfound Latin America summit is to promote freedom, security, and prosperity in our region. The following countries will be in attendance: Argentina, Bolivia, Chile, Costa Rica, the Dominican Republic, Ecuador, El Salvador, Honduras, Panama, Paraguay, Trinidad and Tobago, and maybe some others as well. And the president will be speaking with the leaders of this country, who have really formed a historic coalition to work together to address criminal narco-terrorist gangs and cartels and counter illegal and mass migration into not only the United States but the Western Hemisphere.